Mr. Speaker, I'm so saddened by the 6 or 8 Gen Zs who were killed when they were coming to Parliament to bring their petitions. And yet, they were doing their rightful demonstrations. Mr. Speaker, the police, through their leader, the IG, have no right to shoot with live bullets. They would have used blank bullets and tear gas to dispatch our young people. Mr. Speaker, as a mother, I was in this Senate that day, and every time I had a bullet shot, my stomach was like leaving my body as a mother, because I knew that's a bullet which has hit a child. Mr. Speaker, I didn't know what to do. But they would have been allowed just to come. We've had many people in the gallery, the Speaker's gallery and the public gallery, to listen, and even we've had many people bring their petitions here, and we have dealt with them. I want to condole with the families and tell the Gen Zs of Kenya, first of all, I want to congratulate them.
Leadership is action. It has also been shown, and we really appreciate as a House. And let me remove the worries from Dr. Buru. I don't know if you knew I was the one to pick the mic next and to tell him that it's an opportunity for every leader in this country to speak and guide the executive correctly for the betterment of us as a country, as Kenya. We are in this House, we are already here, and we are going to do what is right, what is correct. Let me start by giving my sincere condolences to the fallen souls, not only here in Parliament, but in the different parts of this country. It's been a sad moment, and it's a big lesson to learn. Issues have come from right, left, and center. But let me start with our young, or my young brothers and sisters, that is the Gen Z, and note that how they've done things, it's been a while. I want to tell the parents that school fees was not lost. We can see the kind of kids that we have, a generation that is educationally equipped, well versed with matters national and even international levels. The education system, I applaud you, because the education that you've actually offered to the generation that we have, and what we've seen, and how we've seen them articulate issues, is something to pride in. We are very proud of our children. But I want to guide them further to that, Madam Speaker, and mention to them that Gen Zs, do not let your bar go down. You've set a standard, and when you set a standard, let it be up high as you proceed to make it go higher. What do I mean by this, Madam Speaker? On the day that these demonstrations were last week, you noticed, or we noticed, that by evening, by 5 p.m., Madam Speaker, the Gen Zs were exiting and going back and retreating rather, as part of their well-organized demonstrations, peaceful, a good strategy. But in that evening, sadly, some of the goons that had joined turned to them, so innocently, Gen Zs as they were, and started looting from them. As they organized yesterday, it became evident that the demonstrations were already infiltrated by goons. Goons who've indicated hooliganism, looting. Nairobi has been highly affected. People have lost businesses. People have lost jobs, Madam Speaker. The strategy that Gen Z had is different from what we saw. Madam Speaker, we all remember the case of Kevin, a student, 12 years, who was shot by a stray bullet. Yesterday, as I went back home, Madam Speaker, I witnessed young uniformed school children running away from the tear gas. And it is sad. Then I want to ask the school institutions, we have PTAs, we have board members of schools that could make decisions, as we've seen some private schools made the same, and ask the students to stay at home. Not going to school a day or two. It's not a big deal because all of you are not attending the class. We had a COVID whereby people stayed home for 1 year. The security and the safety of our young children comes first. And I want to urge learning institutions, especially the lower learning institutions, even the high schools, especially the day scholars, the board and the PTAs, to make some of these quick decisions to ensure there is much safety. But back to what has brought us to this point. I've heard, and I want to thank the President who said, I'm willing to have dialogue with the Gen Zs. We appreciate. But I want to say that even as that process will take place, but charity begins at home. You have Gen Zs within State House, young boys, young girls who are within your surrounding. Don't even go far, because they are speaking one language. They are speaking the same thing. Start with them. They will tell you things. They will tell you everything. Give them an opportunity. It just starts there within your institution because they are there. And I'm saying that because I've also seen them. Give them a chance, 30 minutes. Have a conversation. They will bring light to you. They will tell you. You will connect with them. You know, for Gen Zs, it's not just about talking. It's about also vibing. You vibe. You listen to them more when they articulate their issues, because what they want to being done is to be listened more. I want to state we also not only have a Gen Z, we also have what we call the Gen Z Alpha. The Gen Z Alpha are our kids at the age of 10, 9, 11. And Gen Alpha has been watching what Gen Z is doing. And I take leaders back to the times whereby a few years ago, some of these kids were in high school, and we witnessed quite a number of schools being banned at a particular moment. We are where we are, whereby the same students or the same kids are able to articulate their issues at the national level. The young ones are also able to see that. I was able to see a few of them coming out and carrying the placards of Reject Finance Bill, a 10-year-old. Why? Because they've seen what their elder ones are doing. What am I trying to say this evening? I'm trying to say this is the opportunity to correct already what is out here, so that the younger group does not undergo what the Gen Z is undergoing right now.
Whatever issues that have been brought by the Gen Zs are not new issues in this country. Look at the issue of restructuring government. We had the Abdikadir report of 2015 that actually listed the parastatals in this country and how to deal with different policy issues that were affecting each. Mr. Speaker, we do not need a repeat of the same. We have very intelligent Kenyans who've gone down and actually done this work and given recommendations, which those recommendations are gathering dust in the name of reports which have never been implemented to date, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the issue of Gen Z is not going to be forgotten anytime soon. It will keep reoccurring. But I want to urge that let it not be that we have to have protests for issues regarding young people, Kenyans, to be heard. Mr. Speaker, these are some of the reasons
why generally people feel like maybe we are not listening. Mr. Speaker, when you look at some of the issues they seconded, if I refer to DCI, DCI needs to conclude their investigations on some of the people who are arrested. IPOA also needs to swing into action. An organization like NCIC should be disbanded with immediate effect, Mr. Speaker, because a lot of hate is going around all over and no one is doing anything about it, Mr. Speaker. We cannot, those are some of the organizations which are siphoning public resources without nabbing people who are actually giving hate to the public and inside. Mr. Speaker, as I also talk about the matter where SRC is recommending a pay rise for legislators, I want to turn down that in particular, Mr. Speaker, and I hope the newspaper headlines tomorrow will be reading that MPs protest pay rises. Mr. Speaker, it can't be that when one issue is good for the other, it's bad for another. When corruption in the national government is mentioned, let the county governments also be mentioned, Mr. Speaker. The money that SRC wants to add us should go into putting that money together so that JSS teachers can be employed, more equipping of public health facilities, so that Kenyans generally get the services they rightfully require, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I also want to indicate that social media is a very active tool, and I salute the young people for agitating for change in this country, Mr. Speaker. We didn't have to wait for the young people to set direction, because sometimes, starting with this House, we are told of ranking members, so we are borrowing from those who have come before us. But in this case, the list of the expected in society are the ones who are now giving direction, Mr. Speaker. That needs to be something we as a House need to reflect about, and not just leave it to maybe the President to implement. The President has already invited the young people on X tomorrow, and I want to encourage most of them to flood that space and raise whatever issues they have to do with how best we can change leadership in this country. But as much as that is left to the President, we as politicians also need to put a hand in playing a role to fight corruption, Mr. Speaker.
A lot of reflection has to be focused on Parliament. Mr. Speaker, we have allowed Parliament to be an appendage of the state. We have allowed Parliament to be an appendage of state. How do you feel when before a critical bill before the House, parliamentary group meetings are held in State House? Mr. Speaker, I think we need to change the standing orders so that all parliamentary group meetings are held within the presence of Parliament. Even my own party, ODM, we should hold our meetings within the presence of Parliament. Let our leader come here and chair our meetings. Let President Ruto come to this Parliament and chair the parliamentary group meeting within the presence of Parliament. The idea of us being taken to State House and given orders on how to operate in this House, how to vote, has to stop from today.
I have to be sincere, Mr. Speaker, that there were days in the night that I contemplated even quitting and said, perhaps maybe other people can do it. But this is not the time to quit, because quitting doesn't solve. It doesn't get us out of the hole that you already are in. If it's about getting out and running away, Mr. Speaker, you first sort the mess that you created. I'm afraid, Mr. Speaker, that I know that is the agony that many of our colleagues have thought through. And therefore, just to bring the country up to speed and appreciate why the Senate of the Republic of Kenya is seated this morning, is that we had a session yesterday in the afternoon where we sat down as a Senate of the Republic of Kenya off camera, not in this chamber, but seated somewhere together and reasoned and said, what is it that we can make as our contribution? We are deeply embarrassed, Mr. Speaker, that it has taken young children to point to us that you are naked as our leaders. Extremely troubling. A moment that, to many of the people that I listened to yesterday in the afternoon as leaders shared their experiences and what has been the last few weeks, I realized that we are in extraordinary times, and ordinary solutions that we have proposed in the past cannot work this time. Unless we are serious, unless we are genuine, unless we are honest, unless we mean it, let us not begin this conversation in this house this morning, Mr. Speaker. And I'd wish to put it on record that I come 100% willing and committed, standing before the Senate and the Republic of Kenya, knowing well that one way or the other, I have made a contribution that I am ready to be persuaded and to be led jointly, first of all, by the leaders that are here and by the things that we are being told by the people that are speaking in the public spaces and the conversation that's going on in the country, Mr. Speaker, on what we need to do to redeem and win back our country. The country is complaining of a broken system, Mr. Speaker, that nothing works. Absolutely nothing. That this is a rigged economy where only those with proximity to power and the advantage unduly given to them by the spaces they occupy, either in public or private institutions, Mr. Speaker, are able to enjoy living in the country. And we are being asked to repair and fix it. Where this thing has reached, Mr. Speaker, it needs an overhaul. I am afraid that not the usual glue and gum that we put into areas that are leaking will solve this time. It's completely broken. If it's a pipeline, Mr. Speaker, it is time to decommission and set up a new pipeline. That's what I hear as being challenged. We are being told that everybody wants a fair shot at life and not our children to get better chances at education. Better chances, Mr. Speaker. I grew through our public education systems, from primary to secondary to university, Mr. Speaker. And it was the best at that particular time. People are complaining, Mr. Speaker, that unfortunately, as it is today, nobody with a pen in this country takes their children either to public, primary, secondary, or even university because it's completely finished, Mr. Speaker. But why is it that when granted such an opportunity, we are not able to make it better? I believe that an opportunity to serve, Mr. Speaker, and this is what I hear as being told as the leaders, an opportunity to serve is to be reminded that we have issues, but we have looked at you and we think you have the wisdom and the ability to make it work for all of us. Can you go and serve? Go and make it possible for the rest of us to enjoy.
To tell me, when lastly, the Inspector General of Police, Japheth Koome, spoke to this nation. And they went to the archives and they have told me that the last time that the IG spoke to Kenyans was on 17th of April 2024. So, Speaker, one of the requirements for demonstrations is that demonstrators would notify the police, they would be guided on where to go and how to organize their demonstrations, be escorted through streets or wherever they are going, presentation of petitions. The IG is absent. Mr. Speaker, Mr. President, the words that the President used on the former IG, Mr. Mutiambai, on the level of incompetence and being clueless, perhaps those words are better suited used on IG Koome. Perhaps actually the President spoke too early when he addressed Mutiambai, talking about incompetence and lack of capacity. the Inspector General of Police is the embodiment of lack of capacity to lead the Kenya Police Service. Mr. Koome must leave office immediately for this country to enjoy peace and tranquility.